Welcome, my friends. How are you? I wanted to talk a little bit about a subject that's probably not talked about enough because I don't think it's fully understood in terms of its ramifications, and yet it's so rampant and has such an effect on everyone's life, whether they are actively affecting their life or they're being affected indirectly. And actually, what I'm talking about is pornography. It is, as you know, absolutely everywhere. And there's a couple of things that I want to discuss briefly about what viewing pornography from a metaphysical and energetic, psychological, and emotional perspective, what actually goes on when you do this. Okay? And I'm not making any judgments about it one way or another, but I am going to tell you what does happen metaphysically and energetically. Okay? So, one of the things about pornography is that one of the things is that it puts you in a passive role. So, in other words, essentially, you are watching people engaging in sex. You are not engaging in intimacy or sex with another. So, really, what you've done is you have removed yourself, right? And you are actually just in a passive state. Now, this doesn't maybe on the surface this doesn't seem like a big deal, but it actually it is because you're training your mind not to participate in really one of the most sacred things that a human being could ever do, which is engage in intimacy. So you are putting yourself in a passive state. You are no longer engaging. You're actually training yourself not to take action and engage in connection and communion. And I want you to let that land what I just said. Now, what I also want you to realize is that how this carries over, this viewing, rather than engaging and taking action, how this plays over in all sorts of scrolling and just going from video to video, whether it's Instagram or YouTube, right? We've really replaced taking action and building our life and expressing ourselves with being in a passive, receptive consumer state. And I'm not really sure we really understand because we're training our mind because of the dopamine hit, which makes us think that we've actually accomplished something. Let's say when we're watching pornography and we're able to orgasm or reach some sort of level of pleasure, the dopamine hit gives you the false sense that you've actually accomplished something. So, again, just take a look at what's really going on in terms of what we're doing to ourselves. And I want you to start to see how this bleeds into other aspects of your life, whether you think it does or whether you think it doesn't. I'm telling you right now, it's inevitable because you're training your mind to be in a passive consumer mode and you're rewarding yourself rather than making any kind of real connection or communion. Okay. Another thing, just in terms of pornography, is the hyper stylized, hyper stimulation, right? So also we are training our mind and therefore our body, the body mind connection. We are training our body mind connection that it needs hyper stylization, hyper stimulus in order to be aroused. So what we're really doing is we're deadening ourselves. We are desensitizing ourselves. We are cutting ourselves off from the ability to truly connect and to truly commune with another because now the brain is getting used to this hyper stylized hyper stimulation in order to reach a certain state, an ecstatic state or orgasm. Or so again, we're harming ourselves when we really look at this. What's really happening? And again, see how this bleeds into other aspects of your life. Don't just look at this in terms of sex, because that's part of the issue. We tend to compartmentalize because the ego mind identity always sees things in compartmentalization, but that's actually not what's going on. We will then eventually do this on all other facets of our life. So, in other words, our ability to focus, our ability to stay focused, right? Our ability to concentrate, unless there's just hyper stylized, hyper stimulation, we're not going to be able to stay focused. So, again, see how we're eroding our natural way of operating through doing this. So these are these are just some of the things, not to mention the disconnect that you'll have from other people, not to mention the isolation, the shame. There's a whole bunch of things. This is a huge, huge problem that is just not talked about enough, honestly. It is just not. And if you are struggling with this, this is not about judgment. I love you no matter what, and I always will. But I feel it's really important we start to understand what's really going on metaphysically. Okay? And this is just a couple of the things that I wanted to talk about in terms of pornography. So, I've talked about this real briefly in some of the interviews that I just did since I got to the Middle East. Is that some of the questions, I think I've been asked every kind of question that actually exists. But some of the questions I get asked all the time, it's kind of like I get asked about meditation all the time. I get asked about reincarnation all the time. And I get asked about sex all the time. And so I've really done extensive courses and written extensively about pretty much almost every other subject except sex. So I felt it was time to finally address, excuse me, finally address sex from a higher consciousness, enlightened perspective about what is really going on. So I'm going to be teaching a revolutionary course, and it's not just about sex. I'm going to be talking about energy. I'm going to be talking about the power that is actually behind all the different applications, how it can be used, not really understanding the power of it or the purpose of it, because things have been warped and inverted and perverted. So, all that to be said, if you look into the pinned comment below, I'm going to be teaching a course on sacred energy exchange, SEX, sex. And so I'm going to share an insight that is really not on this planet at this time. So it is my desire that you attend. You will learn more about yourself, sex, intimacy, energy, what you can actually do with that energy, or the various applications of that energy, and what is really going on when we engage in sex, when we engage in intimacy. What is really happening way beyond physical sensory perception, way beyond body consciousness, and therefore way beyond the intellect. So I feel like this knowledge, this wisdom is completely lacking on this planet, and I just felt that it was time that we do something about it. So if this is of interest to you, and it affects your life in way more ways than you understand, uh, click on the link pinned in the comments below. I'll be teaching a class on sacred energy exchange, sex, very soon, towards the end of November. Until then, I love you all, and I'll see you very soon.